the Healing Through Love podcast with Charlene Lynch and Rose Davidson. Christina Foxwell explains how we can find joy, love and our potential after overcoming trauma in episode 12.
So I'm going to just start with thoughts. So if we've been abused and we've got PTSD and we're surviving, the thoughts that we're creating are based on a belief of what we think we are, or a belief around a situation. So I have a belief, and then I have thoughts that float around the belief, and of course I've got emotions that are, so it's all coming out, right? But to change the behavior is what I'm looking for. So let me run through this. I'm going to use your language, Charlene. You find you're below the line, right? And you are feeling emotions of fear, anger, frustration, blame, and blame is a discharge of pain and discomfort. So please always remember that. Blame is not.
Welcome to another episode of Healing Through Love. Each week, we share ideas, experiences, and resources to increase the awareness of domestic and family violence and to empower survivors to grow and thrive. We talk with experts who share their advice, or with people who have experienced abuse, no matter where they are on their journey. This is all about healing through love. And now, here are your hosts, Charlene Lynch and Rose Davidson.
Hello and welcome to the Healing Through Love podcast. I'm your host, Charlene Lynch from charlenelynch.com. Healing Through Love is a social enterprise whose vision is to shift awareness on domestic and family violence within the community for survivors and also victims. Our mission is to provide family and domestic violence survivors with a soft place to land by offering advice and services available to them and their families. We interview experts and survivors who share their personal stories and offer advice for those who have experienced abuse, no matter where you are on your healing journey. As well as our podcast, Healing Through Love, we also hold annual Pamper Days in Adelaide and Tasmania, Australia. Our survivors of domestic and family violence, they actually get together and with our local businesses come together and pay it forward by providing their services and resources on the day. So think day spa. It's a magnificent experience, and looking forward to the next one coming up in May. Now we've got a special guest with us today, and I'm very excited to be introducing Christina Foxwell. She's devoted her life to helping others find and follow their passion, transform their lives and grow into the people they were always meant to be. Her life's journey began in Port Elizabeth, which is in South Africa, and ultimately landed her in Sydney, Australia. Her road, she's been all over the place. In fact, rather than me read this, we should just be asking her exactly why she's here to share her story today. Welcome, Christina.
Thank you, Charlene. It is such a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much. And to everyone else out there, it's a pleasure to be in your space today.
Oh, thank you, Christina. I'd love to know a little bit more about your personal journey. We find lots of people that have found themselves as healers on any level have been through a personal journey themselves.
Yes.
What brought you through to the personal journey of healing?
I think we sometimes think as we go out of a certain situation, it won't ever happen to us again. And then, oops, I call it rinse and repeat. And suddenly we're in some weird and wild cycle again. And I think that's the dimension of my life. I used to say I should write a book called The Chronicles of Christina, because my family were always waiting for the next iteration of whatever was going to happen to me. And I think, as you said, I was born in Port Elizabeth, South Africa, and I grew up as a Pentecostal minister's daughter. And I think in my journey, I could start earlier even because I was molested as a little girl. And because of that, I was always wanting to be loved. And I think that's one of those things that sometimes we get sucked into these relationships with people who seem to be a safe haven. And, you know, I lived in South Africa, got married young because, you know, you don't get to have sex outside of marriage. Let's just be real. And my dad was really, really strict. So got married early when I was 21 to my childhood sweetheart, who was 23. And, you know, I saw the signs along the way. And, you know, we were engaged twice before we got married because I wasn't sure this was actually the right path. And I'm sure there are people out there who go, the warning signals were there, but I was either determined to fix them or prove that they could love me or whatever it might be. And I'm not judging anyone out there because, my goodness, to walk the path that I've been through and that you go through, I call it the stony path. I remember a few years back, I started my practice 10 years ago, and I was very much coming from an education perspective. How can we educate ourselves? And I understood purpose was important, but I didn't realize I needed to heal as much as I did. Sometimes we think we can intellectualize ourselves out of our pain and out of our trauma, but we can't. It's a journey of great love. And I suppose, I mean, I could keep talking, Charlene. Which way are you going to direct me?
I love it. So, you know, that's so true. And we have brought up you've brought up lots of things there. So let's unpack a few of them. But, you know, through the healing journey, many of us intellectualize our wellness process, and we learn and we educate ourselves, we listen, we read, we watch videos, we get ourselves into a place where we're educated. However, we haven't necessarily gone through the work to do the healing. So we haven't necessarily gone through the body work. We haven't necessarily gone through the mind work to get the healing so that we can move forward and not have to repeat the patterns. So I'm totally on that. So I went and became a holistic psychologist because I felt, oh, yes, this will fix me. All it did was dig up a whole new layer. And now I knew what I knew, but I still couldn't seem to stop it happening. So not only do we need to intellectualize it, we do need to bring it into that body, into that mind, into that soul, into that spirit space. So
absolutely, it has to be a transformation.
True. And you're right about repeating the patterns. As late as 2019, which is not that long ago, I had yet another experience. And I really thought that I had, you know, done and dusted that and put that to bed years ago. And yet again, I found myself in a situation, just another rinse and repeat. And it was a rude awakening to realize that even knowing what I know, that I can still put myself into those situations and live below the line. So I hear you.
Beautiful. And I think with that very statement that you just made is that I think we can be really hard on ourselves when we go through rinse and repeat. I've got these lovely taglines for the crazy things we go through. I think we go through rinse and repeat because we can't face the shame of what we went through. And sometimes I think we forget about some of those. We hide it. We put it so far away. I have someone I coach, and they went, why would I want to look at that stuff? It's over and done. And I said, it is over and done. But if I'm not willing to face it, I can never see it as a gift. And I often have people who've gone through this journey and go, how can you see what you went through as a gift? Well, I have two choices. I can either see it as a bitterness, and then it will fall into my heart, and I will give that pain away that I relive every single day. Or I can look at my life and I can see all the beauty that I have. And I can start being grateful for my journey.
That's so true. It's about bringing those higher frequencies to the low frequency patterns. So I'm a lover of gratitude, understanding that joy, love, and gratitude are right up there on the high frequencies to help them negate the lower frequencies. Yes, and we still need to pull back the covers. Just
Oh,
high frequency doesn't necessarily mean that we deal with the low frequency. So it's like we have to do both. It's like we have to pat our head and stir our stomach at the same time. We need to bring a higher frequency, and yes, we still need to unpack. The thought that you can just walk away and just think positive thoughts to heal the damage, well, it's ludicrous. And yet there are people out there that are espousing this is the way to heal. But we need to unpack it, at least to the point where we can do it even from the observer's perspective, so that we can put it to rest, really, and move on. I didn't do that. I crammed in all this positive stuff, did the positive psychology, did the holistic psychology, crammed all that in, and still hadn't had the chance to look at how I was still playing below the line in attracting a partner that was going to do me harm. So yes, and yes, you've got a convert here.
so I have to share with you, so I love Brene Brown's work. If anyone's found her work, oh my God, she changed my life, her stuff. But what it did was it started the journey. So that, as you said earlier, it started that education piece for me. And as a coach, I started incorporating some of her stuff. And I always say I'm like the guy that was the fly, in the movie, The Fly. I'm almost 50. So I've got to test what I'm doing. I can't do what I do without walking the talk. I have to do it. I have to walk the talk. I'm so authentic. Maybe it's because my dad was a minister. You had to live your mission, right? And so I got into her work and I loved it. And then I had a client of mine who was a psychologist at one of the healthcare organizations that I work say to me, have you delved deeply into the shame? I know you love the vulnerability, but have you looked at the shame piece? And I was like, oh yes, let me get into the shame piece. And then I got into the shame piece and I totally understood it. And shame has now become something that I look at as a lighthouse moment. So when I go through a shame moment, I go, what am I learning? What haven't I laid to rest? What's coming up for me? Why do I feel I'm not good enough? But I think the biggest moment came, and I want to share this with everyone because, to your point, I was hardened up. I thought I could talk vulnerability and not deal with the stuff I needed to deal with. And I thought that was okay. By walking through vulnerability and talking about the logic, it was all good. And my son, who is now 18, he was struggling to go to school because he'd been bullied, and I didn't know. And we were struggling to integrate him back into high school to actually attend school. And the school sent us to the local health district psychology team and psychiatry team to see, well, what's going on with my son. Now, I have to tell everyone out there, I've been married 4 times. Actually, some people go, how do you do that? I said, I have no idea. I have this knack to, they just love me. But when they have me, they no longer know what to do with me. And I don't know what to do with them because I have my patterns that show up and trauma patterns, which means I'm prickly instead of walking through discomfort. And anyway, we were sitting at this psychology office and I walked in there with the little suitcases I have when I go out and facilitate and coach organizations, rolled it into the room. The psychologist just looked at me. I could really see on her face, she was thinking, oh my God, she's one of those women. We sat down. I said, right, I've got an hour. Let's get the show on the road. And she looked at me halfway through the conversation and she said, do you think you could work less? And I exploded. And I shared, how can I trust this man to take care of me and my child, who's not his biological child, but he has helped raise me. But how could I trust him to be there for me? And you're expecting me to work less? This is my child. This is my life. I have to be responsible. I have to show up. I have to deliver. I have to feed the family. No. How dare you say that? Anyway, not my finest moment, yet maybe one of my moments of catalyst, right? And she phoned me later that day. And she said, I have to share with you, you are suffering from PTSD if you didn't know it. And you need help or your son will never heal. And my heart broke as a mother because here I am imprinting my story into my child. And I want him to have the best life. but I am not allowing him to do that because I'm not willing to heal. So I phoned a doctor of psychology who was part of my team, actually coaching my clients. And I said, Robbie, can you help me? And so this is my journey of transformation. So everyone out there, if you're trying to prove to the world that you're tough and you've made it through your abuse and now you're strong, sometimes the bags are too heavy for us to carry. We weren't meant to. We were meant to lay them down so we could be free. And I sat with him and he said, what do you want? I said, I want to be peaceful because I feel like I'm losing my mind slowly. And I'm about to lose this beautiful husband of mine. I know that if my behaviors don't change, I'm going to ruin this beautiful thing I have. Because I was turning him into a controller. My codependency was showing up and I was turning him into an abuser. Anyhow, after much tears and having to look at my story and much love and compassion, that psychologist, he held me as I sobbed and spoke about my story and brought my shame to light. I brought it into the light and I looked at it and I thought, wow, I can have the story define me in a negative way, or I can start loving myself through the journey. And so I started my transformation journey. So for all of you out there, having a therapist is a wonderful thing. Having a great coach is a wonderful thing. I have a coach. I check in with him once a month. He's in Canada. He's amazing. He's a coach's coach. He's so good. As soon as I go into my fierce cycle, he challenges me and I get out, which is wonderful. But I've also educated myself and my family. 2 years ago, I came across positive intelligence, and it taught me how to love me. See, I was harboring resentment towards myself for being stuck in abuse. Why didn't I use my voice? How could that happen? So the love I had to nurture for myself was really important. And I struggled. I did the program 4 times.
Sometimes it does take us a little while to get it, doesn't it?
It does, because you are fighting it in your mind.
And the challenge is that when we're in the space of living below the line, when we're in the space of blame, denial, and excuses, it's very challenging to see that we have the power to step above the line and live in that place of being a victor rather than a victim. And it's very controversial too to have these conversations with people that are on the healing journey, because and I'm saying we because I'm one, we're stuck in the paradigm, we're stuck in the story that's holding us in that space of being a victim. Because, and I'll be really honest, it was working for me to have that history. It was my reason why. It was my excuse to not be able to move forward. Like, it was like heavy luggage, like you say, that I was carrying around. What luggage? This luggage? Oh, I've been luggage forever. I don't know what you're
I'm Supergirl. What do you mean?
So it's a challenge. And, you know, I would love it for our listeners if you can put some space between thought and action and see if that's where you're living, above or below the line. And it's not even all the time. It's a sliding backwards and forwards between the two. The reality is we don't live in one or the other. We slide between the two. But wherever you're spending the most time, and to see what you can proactively do to change that. And even if you're changing your thought processes, your language, all of those things are going to help you live a more empowered life. And yes, and we all know that when we start to shake a little bit and get into our own power, that sometimes doesn't go so well for those around us, because that sheds light on their behavior as well. So always do it intelligently, always ask for help, and always reach out. It's the standard line.
Reach out, allow people next to you. Allow people next to you.
Now, I'd love you to dive in a little bit deep to some of your modalities, because our listeners may not have heard of all of them. So can you just briefly go through some of them, or at least talk about some of your most favorite ones, so that we can explain to the listeners how you work with people to heal?
Beautiful. So I'm going to just start with thoughts. So if we've been abused and we've got PTSD and we're surviving, the thoughts that we're creating are based on a belief of what we think we are, or a belief around a situation. So I have a belief, and then I have thoughts that float around the belief. And of course, I've got emotions that are, so it's all coming out, right? But to change the behavior is what I'm looking for. So let me run through this. I'm going to use your language, Charlene. You find you're below the line, right? And you are feeling emotions of fear, anger, frustration, blame, and blame is a discharge of pain and discomfort. So please always remember that. Blame is not shouting that that person's wrong. It's your pain coming out, okay? Because they're not even there half the time to acknowledge they're wrong. So it doesn't matter, right? So you've got to start. I always start with emotions. I think some people can start with their thoughts, but I always start with my trigger emotions. What emotions am I triggering that are making me feel angry, upset, frustrated, negative? Because our negative emotion should only serve us for about a second, and then we should be able to move into a positive place, right? So if you are struggling with them, you've got to go and think, I wonder what my emotion is telling me. Now, get a pen, get a pad, write. I'm feeling, you could say, awful. That's a good word. I use other words, which I'm not going to use on your show, Charlene, just in case people don't. Okay. And why am I feeling this way? What am I telling myself? What am I thinking? If I'm thinking this, what do I believe? What am I believe? So here are some of my beliefs. I call them moths and I call them lies, and it's lies from my judge or fear that I'm having in my own mind. One of them is no one will ever love you. You're fat, you're ugly, no one will ever love you. Only I can love you. So you have to stay with me. Only I can love you. You belong to me. I changed that because of that, I was struggling to connect with other people because I thought, well, no one's going to want me. So let me replay the story. No, I'm not fat and ugly. I'm beautiful. I'm curvaceous. I'm Sophia Loren's cousin that she has lost somewhere along the line. I am vivacious. I am free. And so I think we've got to catch those negative emotions. We've got to recognize they're there to keep us safe, okay? But they are holding us below the line. And they are holding us captive, and we've got to understand our beliefs and even our values. I want to share something around values. A few years ago, I'm sitting at a Brene Brown conference, and I got the value list out, right? And I'm going, okay, what are my values? Hard work, perseverance, give everything you have. Like I just came up with all of those things. But I'm on the point of breakdown because I'm so exhausted. I'm working myself into a state of frenzy because you can't outrun your story, ladies, gentlemen. Okay. So I'm sitting there, got all of these. The beliefs that fed those values were the beliefs that I needed to take care of my family, that I was everything they had, that if I didn't work like an absolute demon to take care of them, we would not have food on the table, we would not be able to live. So I had wired myself to become a workaholic. Now, I'm not saying it's good or bad, but I needed to change some of those things that I was holding dear as a value so that I could change the way I live. So here's what I think now. I'm good enough. I believe that I can rest. Instead of working 7 days a week, maybe I can work 5.5. Little steps here, honestly. I don't believe that exhaustion is what I should be living by as my motto for be tough, be strong, look, show the world how. No, I can be kind to myself. I can read a book. I can go lie on the bed with earpods in and listen to classical music. I can make unicorns. I make unicorns. Okay. I can sew unicorns. I can do something else with myself. I can hug my child. I can hold my husband's hand. I can be present in the moment. See, I was always focused on the things that would take me away from my feelings. And so I hope I'm giving you an idea. Get a journal out, catch your negative emotions, honor them. They're not bad. It's just don't stay there for too long, honestly. I call them lighthouse moments. Go, I'm just having a lighthouse moment. What am I telling myself? Or, oh my gosh, I am not just having I'm hanging on to the lighthouse like a wild thing. I need to get out of the storm. What do I need to think about? What am I telling myself? How do I shift my thoughts?
There's so much in that. There's so much in that.
I could keep going.
I know, I can tell. So just to talk to the cognitive dissonance, the difference between, once you're having an awakening and realizing that this is where, you are and this is where your life wants to be, and that you're moving to change your language and your thought processes to be the positive. Yes, and there's still this voice inside of your head that keeps bringing you back. What techniques and tools do you use in and around cognitive dissonance to help people move forward?
Well, I use a technique which is called a PQ rep. So I'm just going to use the science of the brain science at the moment. I couldn't shift out of the negative voice for long enough because my neural pathways, which are the lights that wire up in your brain, was actually routing into my survival brain all the time. And it would. It couldn't not do that. It was doing that, right? But if I did that all the time, the negative thoughts and the voices would come up. So what I needed to do was to practice brain reps. Now, these brain reps, what we do is they're 2 to 5 minutes long. It's like going to the bathroom. But what you're doing, you're actually creating a switch in your brain, which is going, and that switch is actually just bringing you right present into this moment. If you see people walking around doing this, they're probably doing a brain rep. Okay, I have glass beads that I have created for my practice. So every person that goes on coaching with me, I teach them how to hold the beads, almost like a rosary, I suppose, and to stay present for 2 minutes. Just breathe in, breathe out, focus on your breath. Just be so present in this moment. Focus on touching your fingertips. If your mind wanders, bring it back. Go, I know I need to cook dinner later, but I'm just touching my fingers. I'm just being so present. I'm present in this moment. See, that's what the brain rep does. Now, what does that do ultimately? Well, once that's happened, I've actually destabilized that neural pathway that was going into my survival brain. And now I can start working on being peaceful. See, what we're trying to do is we want the frontal part of your brain to light up. And when that frontal part of your brain lights up, you've got wisdom, you've got peacefulness, you can navigate situations differently. Ooh, Charlene, remember we spoke about rinse and repeat? Well, we break the circuit of that rinse and repeat, right? Because we're teaching ourselves to think differently.
I love it. I love it. So would you suggest during meditation that people do this, or only when they're doing reprogramming?
Look, I honor the fact that meditation is good for you. If your meditation's half an hour to an hour long, you're going to feel amazing when you're done. The challenge is it's not teaching you how to stop the circuitry in your brain when you're sitting in a meeting with someone and you're having a flash moment where you are about to pass out or choke someone. Not that anyone in this podcast would ever do that, but where you can feel that you are no longer thinking and all you're doing is reliving an emotion. See, that for me is the moment where you go, okay, my negative thoughts are taking overnight. We call it our judge. In order for us to be peaceful, I've got to do a rep right now. I've got to just stay peaceful. I've got to focus on being present in this moment. Wriggle your toes in your shoes. Focus on your toes. Focus on your toes. Focus on something on the wall. Just be peaceful. Don't zone out altogether because they'll think, we don't really care what they think. But just be here. Be in this moment.
So it's about being present and giving yourself an opportunity to draw your attention, your mindfulness to another place so that you can reprogram and rewire the brain. Yeah.
It's the way to rewire the brain. That's when you learn to be above the line. Actually, when you do that, I always talk about forgiveness. And people that have gone through this, especially when they read my story or know my story, they go, how could you forgive? Well, for me to be free, I can't tell you what that person's story is. My first husband, or, some of the traumatic relationships I've had. I can't tell you what their story is. I know my story. And what I'm in control of is to be free. See, if I hold on to that anger and that bitterness and that resentment, I'm poisoning myself, and I'm keeping myself in a state of survival, which means I'm always living for tomorrow to be better. And I'm missing out on how beautiful today is.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Now, you've got a special offer for our listeners, I understand. Is that 3 listeners will get a copy of your book? Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. So my new book's coming out, and it's called The Glass Angel. And The Glass Angel is a part analogy, part memoir, and part practice. So it's a book on alchemy and transformation, on how to transform your life if you've walked through domestic violence, if you've had traumatic events in your life. And I think I've had a ton. I know other people have had a ton too, but my goodness. And I walk you through each of my story seeds, and I show you how I'm forgiving and releasing so that you can do that too. So yes, I'm giving 3 books away because I really want to empower women to change their life, or men, if you've gone through this too, so that I no longer look for what life isn't, but I can live in the beauty of what life is and what it brings to me.
And you also have a special offer that people need to go to the website for. All of these links we'll put in the description and also in the show notes. But if you let them know a little bit more about what they can expect if they go onto your website to access the connection.
So if they go onto my website, I've created a simple 5-step mental fitness practice guide. And it's free. It's free for all our clients, and I want to make it available to you. You can just download it. It's got simple techniques in to help you think about rewiring your brain and to really start looking at your world differently. Similar things like I've explained today. We'll talk about frequency in there. We talk about all sorts of tools, but 5 key tools to help you work on. Gratitude will absolutely be in there. I am a fan of the 21 days of gratitude to shift the way you think. Absolutely. Because if I can see my world for what it is, I don't have to be caught up in what it isn't or what it was. And I just want to say something. I'm not disregarding our stories. I'm honoring who we are as we've walked through our stories. Okay. And so all the tools we have is to help you do that.
I love it. It's so beautiful. We've got so much in common. I am a daughter of, both of my parents were ministers of religion. So I get the daughter of the minister so much.
That's another story in itself.
I know. And that our central message is forgiveness. From my story of my son's suicide and, your forgiveness. So that really resonates with me, and we both speak the language of frequency. So I just feel we could just talk all day.
We could.
We've been speaking for 30 minutes. I didn't know that. Until the little alarm came up in the corner of the screen. We could literally talk all day. It has been such a joy, Christina, to spend quality time with you. And I'm looking forward to our listeners connecting with you and having that opportunity to do the download. And for 3 of our lucky listeners to connect and get a copy. All you need to do is send the email to get a copy of the book, which is Glass Angels. It's been a privilege and a pleasure to spend quality time with you today. And it's time to say goodbye from Healing Through Love. Bye for now.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Healing Through Love. You can get further resources, see the show notes, or simply reach out to us via our website at htlaustralia.org. Thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to your company next time on the Healing Through Love podcast.